Okay, so what you're seeing on the board here is a review of slope. If I wanted to take these 2 points and find the slope, I could do it either of the green way or the blue way, and the answer is negative 13/7 either way. So what do you do then with that if you want to find the equation for the line that goes through these points? I hope you have memorized this. And I know some of you haven't, but just look at that for a moment. How many of you feel like you could have pulled that equation up out of your recesses of your brain? Awesome. That one's called point slope. It's a big deal this year. The one that you may have seen in the past, y equals mx plus b, that was used a lot in algebra, but we use this one as much or more now. So you got to have that one down. If you haven't got it down, write it down, memorize it. Okay, now what do I do with it? Well, I know my slope already. That's the, what letter is the slope? Say it if you know it. M. M is negative 13/7. So I'm writing it right there. Now, I pick either one of the points. Is one of these 2 points simpler than the other? Think about it. Yeah, why? Because it doesn't have the negative, so you won't screw up a double negative or whatever. Okay, so I'm picking the 2, 3, and the x is 2, and notice it doesn't go first. It's very tempting to slap it right there. No, that's a y, obviously. So that x goes over there, and this y goes right here. So it's y minus 3 equals negative 13/7 x minus, and the x of it is 2. There you go. Now, a lot of kids think from here that they have to somehow multiply this all the way out and solve for y. That's an old habit from algebra, back when they really liked y equals mx plus b form and made you solve everything for y. We do not do that here. This is a good answer. No reason to mess it up by trying to multiply it out. If you really wanted to, this could be distributed, but it's a pain in the butt, so don't do it. All right. So, what else do you have to know? Well, this, you remember how I've been saying there's first 20 and then there's top 20? The first 20 skill here is just, can you find the slope? Everybody seemed like they knew how to find the slope. The top 20 skill, that's on the next 20 things that I make you learn, it's got this thing on it, the thing that's on today's homework. So all these things that we're teaching you really are important. They're going to be on your test, but they're not even higher algebra. They're just algebra that you may have forgotten. Okay, so let's actually get into the meat of today's assignment. So I'm going to pause for a second while I pull up the right file here. Everybody with me, just to make sure, would you please turn your iPads my way? This is the part where I catch the people that are playing Fortnite instead of actually with me. Were you unable to open that file? Find that file. All right, I'm seeing I have almost, I couldn't see yours yet. I have everybody with me. Sweet. Okay. So today's goals: calculate the slope. Check mark. Just did that one. Write the equation of a line. Check mark. We just did that one too. Well, and the last thing is this axes of intercepts of a graph. If all it was tell me what the x-intercept is, I hope you'd be able to go, well, that's x and that's y. That's the x-intercept. That's the y-intercept. If you, from a picture, it should be really easy. The thing that's more of a challenge is if I give you an equation and I say, what's the x-intercept of that? That's a little harder. It's not impossible. You can't just look up there and go, oh, it's the 2. No. The 3? No. 2 comma 3? No. None of the above. Okay, so how do you find the x-intercept of that thing? There's a really simple saying that goes along with this. The x-intercept is where, what do you think? All right, I want to note that nobody knew that answer, but you will all know it in a moment. The x-intercept is where y equals 0. Just think that through for a second. Would you agree that that spot right there is an x-intercept? It's touching the x-axis. Let's say that it was the point 5 comma 0. Would you agree that its y is 0? See what I'm saying? So if I pick another spot over here, let's say this is at negative 5 comma 0. Would you agree its y is 0? So if you ever want to know the x-intercept, you set y equals 0. So I stick in a y equals 0. And you get how that turns into nothingness, and then I have 2x equals 12, and so x must equal 6. You see how easy it is to find the x-intercept? But it was not one of the numbers on the screen. You're used to being able to just find stuff because it's there, like this. And we say, what's the y-intercept? And you go, oh, it's the thing at the end, -7. That's not how you should do it. The y-intercept is where x equals 0. Then, yeah, it's true. It is that number at the end, but that's why it's the number at the end. Let me show you what I mean. Later this year, you're going to have parabolas that have been moved like that. That's a parabola that's been moved to the right and down. Does that kind of ring a bell? Sort of remember that? Well, what's its y-intercept? A lot of people go, it's the -4, because that's what you always said, is it's the number at the end. No, that's a weak way to remember it. The y-intercept is where x is 0. So you go put in a 0, and then you go -6 squared, 36. 36 minus 4, 32. 32 is the which intercept? The y-intercept, because we set x equal to 0. So if you want a point for it, if x really equals 0, it's 0, 32. Get what I did there? And I bet you'll get this. If the x-intercept is where y is 0, then the y-intercept would be where x equals 0. It's the other way around, you know what I mean? Okay, so I've been focusing on y-intercept. Y-intercept is where x is 0, so the x-intercept must be where, what? Y equals 0. Okay, so here's an equation. Let me see, 18, there we go. Would you please figure out the x-intercept and the y-intercept for me? When you are done, would you please compare these two rows? You're going to pair with the person across from you. Please don't leave her out because you're technically with him, but okay. And then these two rows straight across from you. And last but not least, these two rows, you guys are going to go diagonal. Check with the person next to you for the x and the y-intercepts. I'll pause while you give that a try. What do you think the first thing I'm going to write is? X-intercept. I'm going to just say the rule, though. X-intercept is y equals 0. So, what you say? 2x equals 18, so x equals 9. If I wanted to make a point out of it, I'd write it like this, 9, 0. You didn't have to, but sometimes on today, it's a Schoology quiz again, they're going to ask you to write it that way, as an ordered pair, like this. How many of you had the right answer, even if it wasn't in an ordered pair? Okay, good. Then the y-intercept. Y-intercept, I'm going to set x equal to 0. So then I go up here and put a 0 in for the x, and that means 6y equals 18. Y must equal 3 if I wanted an ordered pair. 0, 3. You see how easy that is? All right. It takes a problem that would be kind of on the complicated side. It makes it easy. All right, one more thing. This is almost in standard form, but the numbers in front, they're called coefficients, are supposed to be special. What's not special enough about this? So it's not quite technically standard form yet. What do you think, sir? Yes. And those numbers are supposed to be what are called integers. Which one's not an integer? The 2/3. In case you haven't learned that word yet, that's a good ACT word, integer. Integers are like whole numbers, except they're technically different. Do you know the difference between a whole number and an integer? We're trying to help your ACT score right now. If they said, this can be whole numbers, but those have to be integers, what's the difference? Yes?
Integers can be negative.
Very good. Whole numbers start with an O, like whole. Get what I'm doing here? And integers can go negative. That's the only difference. They're like whole numbers, but they can be negative. All right. So what do you suggest I do about it? I mean, can this thing just not be in standard note or standard form? No, I can fix it. That's another one of the first 20 was Remember I was saying don't multiply by the reciprocal. Instead, multiply by the denominator. Everybody fix this so that it will be an equation that's the same equation but written with different numbers. Whoa, still alive. That's one of those moments the case probably just saved you right there. Okay, did you just multiply everything by 3? All right, so that makes that cancel. 2x plus 3 times 3y is 9y equals 27. Why is that any better? Because its coefficients, numbers in front of the variables, are all, what was that word? Integers. Its coefficients are integers, so therefore it is in standard form. All right, that's called standard form. I know you know this one, you've seen it a million times, but it's not called mx plus b form. What form is that? Slope intercept. And last but not least, there's this form. That's the form we practiced at the beginning of the hour. That's called something. Hint, it's got the same m in it as the other one, so it's called point slope. Very good. Said slope point, I wouldn't even mark that wrong. But usually we say point slope. And the point goes here and here. Notice there's minuses in it in the first place. It'll only be gone if there was another minus to cancel it out from the point. All right, I think we covered everything that you need to know. Kind of like this little lame joke. You have to rise before you can run. Right before the track meet. Anyway, we have already done that. We've just talked about this and how you need to have A, B, and C be integers. These are all the different major forms that we want you to know. One kid came up and asked me, how do you know whether you should use those two for the slope or whether you should use these two for the slope? What do you think I told them? It doesn't matter, because you'll get the same exact answer either way. Doesn't matter. I know it seems like you wouldn't get the same answer, but you do. Even if you use the smallest point you have and the biggest point you have, they still will give you the same answer. It's just we'll have to reduce it, but it'll still be the same exact slope. So it doesn't matter. All right. Then, if I asked you to graph this, wouldn't it be handy to know the y and the x-intercepts? Because if you did, you could just go like this and go, you graph both points, draw a line through them. But I know that's not the way you learned it. The way you learned it was to start at the, what's this thing called again? The y-intercept, which you now know and nobody knew before. The y-intercept is where what? X equals 0. Because if you just stick in a 0 right here, yay, I can realize that it's y equals 5. I start there. But how do you finish? You use the slope. And if the slope is -2, why did I just put it over 1? So I can have a what and a what? Rise and a run. Okay, so I'm going to rise -2. That means rise negative would mean fall 2. And then run 1. And there's my dot. And there I go. One last thing. I want to talk about Marzano style grading. For a lot of you that are freshmen, this will be your first time using this. But they use this in multiple math classes here at the high school, so you might as well get used to how this works. Marzano is a researcher guy in education, and he figured out that testing could go better in a certain style, and now it's named after him. Marzano style testing is where you have less questions, which everybody likes. Instead of a 30-question math test, you typically have like 12 questions, or even sometimes only as little as 9 questions on your test. And his theory was, and it bore out, it actually works, when you test a group of kids using this style or the other style of test, the simpler, old school style, where you have a lot of easy questions and a few hard ones in there. Well, if you have a lot of easy questions padding your test, it feels good, because you're like, I got it right, I got it right, I got it right. There's only a couple I didn't know. And you get what I mean? Like if you had 30 questions and there's lots of easy ones, then you can have you need like a 27 out of 30 to get a strong score. Well, what if we just took it down to only the hard questions, but we made it an easier percentage to get an A? That's kind of what Marzano is. So let's say that there are questions 1, 2, 3, and 4, and those are something we call the R2s. They're the easy ones. And then there's questions 5, 6, 7, and 8, and those are the hard ones. And we give you what's called an R4 question. Say the 9th question is an R4 question. R4s are like a challenge question. Like, we've never told you how to do that. The other ones, we'll have shown you how to do it. That's fair. But there's one question on these tests that we never showed you how you could do a problem like that. You have to figure it out, like problem solving, and just come up with, well, I guess I could try it this way. Anyway, so these, in this class, different classes treat them differently, but in this class, those are going to count like a 5%, kind of like extra credit. So it'll take whatever your score was, and if you can get that R4 right, it'll bounce you up 5%, which is pretty nice. So if you had an 85%, now you'll be at a 90. See what I'm saying? All right. And that's subject to change because the team, the higher algebra team, can make a new decision on how we want to grade those. But bottom line, you're not expected to know how to do the R4s. So let's not even talk about it. But you do have a chance at extra credit on your test because of that. Think of it as sort of like extra credit. It's a question. It's just hard enough that it's tough to get it right. All right. On a normal test, do you get that you need like a 90, at least 90% to get some sort of an A? You know what I'm talking about? You probably never had a math test where 85% got you an A, right? It's pretty much 90, 80, 70, 60. Well, for this style test, when you narrow it down to just the hard problems, would that be fair? No, that's not fair. Take only the hardest problems from the test and then make me get 95% on that. That's like really hard. So they're not all incredibly hard. We have a set of easy ones and a set of hard ones. And you need 75% here, as in if there's only 4 questions, you can get one wrong and you're still okay. And you need a 75% here. Again, you make some dumb mistake on number 6, didn't even notice it was just a dumb mistake, and boom, you're down to only 3 out of 4, which is 75%. Name me another class this year where a 75% gets you a straight A, because the 75% gets you a 95%. So in other words, if you get only one wrong in the hard section and one wrong in the easy section, you will have an A on the test. Okay. But if you get another one wrong, besides your one free easy, like one mistake in each section, if you get another one wrong, now you're approaching, you obviously did worse than an A at that point. At that point, you go down to a B. And if you lose another one, well, now you only got half the questions right. But you still get a C. Only half the questions right, you still get a C. That's not a bad deal. Okay, so this is a pretty generous system. It really is. A lot of kids will whine about the whole, but I only made a stupid mistake. And, well, if you only make one stupid mistake, you'll still have an A. You have to make more than one. If you make lots of stupid mistakes, yeah, it'll hurt. But then again, on any test, if you make a lot of stupid mistakes, it'll hurt. Any style of test. All right, so all of that was to do 2 things. Number 1, remind you that this class uses Marzano style grading for the tests, which means basically you can get 75% on the easy and 75% on the hards and you get a straight A. But if you make more mistakes than your one free one, you're going to lose a whole grade. What if that point wasn't right? What if I oopsed that point? Do you get I'm going to lose? If this was a test, I would lose an entire grade. I could go down from an A to a B. Okay, because I've already made my dumb mistake on some other problem. All right, so then how do you check and make sure that that point's right? I think it's right. Should you do it the same way you did it the first time? No, because you'll fall into the same trap. Like if you were counting in the wrong direction, like maybe this thing's going the wrong direction. Maybe you should be going up and over instead of down and over. Well, here's how you could check. And I'm just encouraging that you check your work. If this is 1, 3, would you agree there's a way to check that 1, 3 is actually on this equation? How? All right. I could find, there's a faster way. What you said would work, there's a faster way. Yes?
Plug it into the original.
Yeah. Put this in here. I want you to try that right now. Please put 1 comma 3 into that other equation. If you don't know what I mean, then you better watch close. Put 1 comma 3 into the equation. That means x is 1 and y is 3. And then you write it out and see if what you have is really true. Is 3 really equal to negative 2 times 1 plus 5? It worked. 3 really is equal to 3. We tested the point. It worked. So my encouragement to you is when we have our first major test, which, by the way, is not tomorrow, but it's the next day, on Wednesday. Now, one thing I want to warn you about, it's actually going to be classified as a quiz. We decided, based on there's some holidays around this time of the year for some people, and we want to honor that, and so we want to decrease the stress level on this, and we're just going to put it in the homework category. So that makes it a big homework quiz. So that means this is going to go in the homework category only, and this little quiz you take on Wednesday is like our first test, but we're not going to actually count it as a test. We're just going to count it as a homework quiz. It happens Wednesday. Okay? So what I assign you tonight and tomorrow, you don't have to turn in immediately because of these holidays that I'm describing. You may turn them in on Thursday if you wish. I recommend that you do them when you have time and when it's okay for you to do them. So if you've got time and you want to get it cranked out, do it whenever it works for you. But this homework quiz that we have on today's homework, which we've already covered everything we needed for, is right. Actually, I want to talk about one more question. It's listed at the end, but basically it's one of those Schoology quizzes. Remember on those, as long as you have a decent score on it, I'm going to give you a really good score on it in the grade book. What that means is, let's say that you just took the Schoology quiz twice and you averaged an 8.5 out of 10. I'm going to give you full credit on the Schoology quiz. As in, I'm not going to just say, okay, she got an 8.5 after 2 turns. I'm putting in 8.5 out of 10. I'm actually going to give you a perfect paper if you had that high of a score. I'm going to give you a 10 out of 10. The reason I'm doing that is because, do you get some kids type in the answer like 45 and then they put by accident a comma after it and then that's all it takes and Schoology marks it wrong? Or I wrote 42.0 and it was really just 42 and it marked me wrong. I will not go through and fix all of those little things for you because I want to save you and me both time. But I will look at your Schoology quiz score, and as long as it is solid, which I am actually taking as 75% or better, then I'm giving you full credit on the Schoology quiz. So that means don't stress about it if you got 76%. You're fine. If you get lower than 75%, I figure that that is a sign you really don't deserve to get a big bump because you had 2 tries, one of which had all the answers. You know, at the end, when you're done with the first try, you know how it gives you all the answers? And you could go back and do it again, having known all the answers. You ought to be able to average a 75% between the 2 tries, averaging. So if you don't get a 75%, then you are stuck with whatever your score was. If it's lower than 75%, you just get that score. So if you get it kind of crappy the first time, you better do it better the second time so your average comes up to above a 75. As long as it's above 75%, then I'm giving you full credit, as in 10 out of 10, like as in a perfect paper. Okay? So try for above a 75. The reason I picked 75 is because it's the same thing as a Marzano style. If you can get 75% on the Marzano tests, you get an A. Same deal. You get 75% in your Schoology quiz, you got an A. So you get a 95%. Actually, you get better than that. You get 10 out of 10. Okay. So this is the last question I want to talk about. And it says, sketch this graph. Some people, if it doesn't say y equals, they just can't graph it. Could you solve this for y? Yes. But there's an even better way. You could make an xy chart. I describe the XY chart as your best friend in graphing because you probably generally will know that this is going to be a straight line, and you probably know kind of how it looks. It's got an x-intercept, which is where y equals 0, and a y-intercept, which is where x equals 0. But you're going to someday be graphing things that you don't even recognize. You could graph that. It's like, what? Never graphed anything like that before. You could graph that. How would you graph that? You would pick things for x, anything you want. Anything you want for x. I want to pick 0, and I'd stick it in and see what happens. I stick in a 0, and then I solve it. This is a little weird, but once I stuck in a 0 for x, do you get that the top would be 6 times 0 is 0? Do you get that 0 divided by anything is equal to 0? Which means that y would have to equal 0. 0, 0. It works. I'm just trying to show you when you've never graphed that before. And yet it even can tell you points on that graph. How about one you have graphed before? Any points you want. I'm going to pick 1, 0, and -1. And I'm going to see what I get when I stick those in. When I stick in a 0 for x, I solve it for y. And it says 2y equals 8. So then y equals 4. Cool. Ooh, and that's special. It's the what? The y-intercept, because it's x equals 0. See? Okay. And then let's try another one. If I stick in 1, I stick in a 1 into the equation. 3 plus 2y equals 8. And then I subtract 3. 2y equals 5. And then y equals 5 over 2, also known as 2.5. 1 comma 2.5. Do you get how you could get a bunch of points that way? All right. And then here's my favorite way to do it. This kind is really nice for finding the x-intercept and the y-intercept. And I just told you that fancy saying. The x-intercept is where what? Y equals 0. Look how fast this is. If the x-intercept is where y equals 0, that's a 0. That's gone. 3x equals 8. X equals 8 thirds. And that's the what again? The x-intercept. So I go to the x-axis and I graph 8 thirds. In case you're bad at this, that's 3 thirds plus 3 thirds plus 2 thirds. Do you get how that's 2 and 2 thirds? 2 and 2 thirds is a dot right there. That's the x-intercept. How about the y-intercept? Fill in this sentence for me. The y-intercept is where x equals 0. So I'm putting an x equals 0 right here. And now, wait a minute, I got to erase this. If I put in x equals 0 right here, then this is 2y equals 8, so y equals 4. Y equals 4 is a dot right there. Oh, there's the 12-minute warning, and it's perfect because I'm all done. I graph the x and the y-intercepts, and then I draw a line through them. So now, the remainder of the time is yours to work on the homework. And remember, it's not actually due tomorrow. They are resumable, so that means you can get as much done as you can right now and then go work on it some other time. Tomorrow I will be gone. I have scheduled on purpose my doctor's and dentist's appointment and some other, it's actually an acupuncture appointment for my Achilles tendon, all tomorrow so that I wouldn't have to miss like multiple days of school. Okay, so tomorrow I'm gone to do all that junk. You guys will have a sub. His name is Mr. Winterhalter. He's very good. He's been subbing for a long time. This is weird, but he's been subbing since you've been in kindergarten. He was a math teacher for the 20 years before you were born. Maybe 30 years before you were born. Anyway, so he's been subbing since you were in kindergarten. At least, probably before you were born, some of you. Anyway, so long story short, he knows his math because he's actually a math teacher. So he can answer your questions. All right, that's all I got for you for the video for today.